Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Barry here with the Scryguys, and today we're going to be doing a Final Fantasy pre-con deck. Final Fantasy is close approaching us, and I know you guys are excited. The anticipation has been going crazy for months, and I'm going to be doing one of my favorite Final Fantasy games, Final Fantasy X. So let's get into it. Really, the real main character, Yuna Grand Summoner. I'm not going to be doing Titus for this. I believe Yuna. I mean, I know the game is Final Fantasy X is focused on Titus, but Yuna, I feel like was the real main character to me. So Yuna Grand Summoner 1 and Bant Legendary Creature Human Cleric Grand Summon, tap, add 1 mana of any color. When you next cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with 2 additional 1/1 counters on it. Whenever another permanent you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, if it had 1 or more counters on it, you may put that number of 1/1 counters on target creature. So it is doing a lot, right? It is a mana dork. It is a +1/+1 generator for creatures, and it is an ozolith. So it's doing everything that this deck wants to do, and I felt like Titus really didn't do it as well, right? I think Titus should have just been like the lieutenant, because I felt like it needed more work around it, versus Yuna is just, yeah, it's just doing everything. And so, and like she did in the video game, right, guys? And so let's go ahead and get into it. Let's find a way to get there. Bant doesn't need help getting there, but we're going to be using a lot of the cards that actually come to the deck. It has 3 visits. It has Farseek. As far as ramp goes, it has Soul Ring, Arcane Signet. Obviously, every commander deck comes with those now. But it also has, like, because we're going to be messing around with 1/1 counters, it has Gyre Sage, and I feel like we needed to add Kami of Whispered Hopes in here. I was really hoping that it was going to get a reprint in this deck, but it's great because it works as a Hardened Scales and it works as a Gyre Sage, giving us more mana the more it grows. So definitely not a hard way to ramp in this deck. You're gonna see that when you look at the deck list, right? But Kodama of the Westry, I believe, is probably going to be the most expensive card in this deck, because I don't believe in the prices of the set of the Final Fantasy set cards as they are at the time of recording. I believe once like a month or 2 passes, it'll settle and kind of reach a nice medium, because at the end of the day, it is a standard set. So it's not like Lord of the Rings, where like I think it was geared more towards like being played in modern and all that stuff. So definitely great though, because a lot of our creatures are going to be modified creatures, so they're going to have trample, and then we should be able to just go ahead and fetch out every basic land in our deck. All right. I did want to keep a good chunk of Yuna's Guardians in here just to stay true to the whole theme of the deck. As far as like lore wise, not like actual 1/1 counters, but what's amazing is that a lot of the Guardians in this deck still like kind of stick with the theme of like the +1/+1 counters, because for precon sometimes they kind of go into 2 different directions depending on how like maybe people are going to want to build it like this. So but for this one, I feel like it stayed pretty well on theme, right? So obviously we're going to put Titus in here. At the beginning of your combat in your turn, you may move a counter from target creature you control onto a second creature, and then it's going to give us a way to when those creatures with counters on them attack, it'll give us a draw and a proliferate. So that's really awesome, and it only happens once per turn. Lulu's Turn Guardian is great because it almost acts like a propaganda. Not really, but it kind of dissuades people from attacking us, because when they do, we put stun counters on those creatures, and the fact that it has proliferate on it to keep them stunned is going to be great. And then we have Waka Devoted Guardian, which is an amazing card. I feel like it's not getting enough hype around it. It has reach for 2, and Selesnya has reach trample whenever it deals combat damage to a player, destroy target artifact that player controls, and it gets a 1/1 counter. But it also has Blitzball Captain, which he was at the beginning of your end step. If a counter was put onto Waka this turn, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So it grows the board, keeps artifacts in check, and yeah, just a great guy. Riku Resourceful Guardian is a 2 and a blue. Whenever 1 or more counters are put on a creature until end of turn, it can be blocked. But The awesome part about it is it has the ability to steal for 1 and a tap, move a counter from target creature an opponent controls onto a creature you control, activate only as a sorcery. So we can keep our opponent's creatures in check from growing a little too out of hand, and the fact that it just takes any counter, which I think is great, right? Um, is pretty powerful. You know, we could take. I mean, they've been pushing more of like the, you know, the death touch counters, the lifelink counters, trample counters, and so that'll be great to put on our creatures, and then makes our creatures unblockable for the turn. Oron Venerated Guardian is a 3 and a white vigilance, has shooting star. When it attacks, put a 1/1 counter on it. When you do, exile target creature the defending player controls with power less than Oron until Oron leaves the battlefield. So I would say be pretty careful about this. You know, I would probably use Oron to just really keep people's commanders in check, because you know, people might just want to, yeah, just put their commanders back in the command zone versus putting it under Oron. And you know, if you have a way to just give this thing like hexproof and indestructible, it'll just stay forever. And so I don't think a lot of people want to take that chance. But yeah, really great card, pretty powerful, I would say. Kamari, Valiant Guardian for 2 and Simic, has Vigilance, has Ronso's Rage. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a 1/1 counter on Kamari and tap target creature an opponent controls. Then you may have Kamari become a copy of that creature, except it stays Kamari Valiant Guardian, and it has Vigilance and this ability. So really awesome way for us to kind of take advantage of the powerful creatures our opponents are playing. You know, I actually thought about using him as a deck, or using him as a commander for a deck, but it's just, it plays to the table. So I think it's going to be a great one of those great commanders on its own, where you can kind of take it to any table except for CEDH, and kind of adjust to that power level. But yeah, super great for this deck too. We can take advantage of our opponents like Italis, Nyx Bloom Ancients, things like that. That Vault-Born Tyrant. Yeah, so really awesome. But we also gotta count on our supporting cast. And in our supporting cast, we have Grateful Apparition for 1 and a white. Flying whenever it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker. Proliferate. Metastatic Evangel is same 1 and a white. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, proliferate. And Evolution Sage, which I feel like is in every deck that has to deal with any kind of counters. When a land enters, you proliferate. So just a way for us to keep on growing our board if necessary. Oka Traveling Merchant is from this precon. 1 and a blue. Remove a counter from a non-land permanent you control. Draw a card. But that's an awesome card too, because if you decide to put it like in anything saga wise, you can kind of control the sagas in there too. Draw a card out of it. But for this one, it's just gonna be great. Extra card draw. Cold Ice Selkie is 1 and two Simic hybrid colors. Island Walk. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you draw that many cards. So if we just keep growing her, or this Merfolk, we get to go ahead and have one of the best card draw engines in our deck. I mean, if we use Yuna to tap into her, it'll come down as a 3/3, and if we put any kind of boots on it, give it any type of haste, we can go ahead and draw 3 cards. Not a bad change, or not a bad exchange for 3 mana, right? And then Fathom Mage, we just go ahead and keep putting counters on it and draw cards. We also have Danny Pink, who I feel like at this point is like the best card in any counters deck, right? Because creatures you control have, whenever one or more creatures counters are put on this creature for the first time each turn, draw a card. You just draw so many cards with this guy. It's insane. It is insane, right? But we have this is going to be one of those decks that we really need the board to stay where it's at. And Guardian of Faith is a great budget to T-Pro because it flash vigilance. When it enters, any number of other target creatures you control phase out. And the great thing about phasing, if you guys don't know, is that the counters won't disappear on them. Because if you use things like Oh gosh, anything that will just blink your board to save it, you're gonna lose all the counters on it, which kind of sucks, right? And so if you use cards like this where they just phase it out, we can keep them, keep the pressure on our opponents, and hopefully win the next turn. Glen Elendra Archmage is great because we can control the persist on this by just moving more counters on it, negating the -1/-1 counter, and just having a permanent counter spell on the board. Luminous Broodmoth is 2 and 2 white. Whenever a creature you control flying, whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter on it. So just a great way for us to recoup on a board wipe. And then we have ways to just deal major damage to our opponents and keep the pressure on. So Champion Lampholt is a classic for any kind of creature deck. 1 and 2 green. Creatures with power less than Champion Lampholt can't block creatures you control. And then whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Champion. So we should be able to grow Champion super quick in this deck. Chocobo Knights for 3 and a white creature human knight. Whenever you attack creatures you control with counters on them, gain double strike until end of turn. So again, keeping the pressure on. I feel like that's what we need to. This is going to be a very aggressive ban deck, right? And Herald of Secrets gives all our creatures with 1 counters on them unblockable. Oh man, we are closing this game out. So we have to find ways to also help with that. So we're gonna be casting Aga spells. So if you guys don't get the reference, in Final Fantasy, you have like fire spells, but then you can upgrade it to Blizzaga Blizzara, Fiara, whatever. And then I believe, oh my gosh, I'm exposing myself. Aga is like the most powerful version of that, right? So Blizzaga, Fireaga, Thundaga, and so we need spells like that too. So we have Wavegood Pie for 2 and 2 blue. Sorcerer, return each creature without a 1/1 counter on it to its owner's hands. So budget Psych Rift. A more fair Psych Rift, I would say that too, right? Because your opponents could have counters, creatures could have counters on them. We have Ripples of Potential, which is like the mono blue heroic intervention. But you have to have counters, right? For a 1 in the blue instant proliferate, then choose any number of permanents you control that had counters put on them this way. Those permanents phase out. So just a great way for us to again keep our counters on our creatures, so we can keep pressure on our opponents. And then Mutational Advantage 1 and Simic instant permanents you control with counters on them gain hexproof and indestructible until turn. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to those permanents this turn, and then we get to proliferate. So strong, and I feel like so underappreciated. And then we have our Ultima Weapon, which is gonna be the card that's going to help us kind of just take over the game and probably close it out. Sage of Hours, I feel like, is a classic card in any kind of 1/1 counters deck. For 1 and a blue heroic, whenever you cast a spell that targets Sage of Hours, put a 1/1 counter on it, and then remove all counters from Sage of Hours. For each count of 5 counters removed this way, take an extra turn after this one. I mean, if you really get this thing to stick and have a way to constantly put counters on it, you're just basically gonna run away with the game. And a lot of people are going to see this from a mile away and try to remove it permanently, right? Oh man, but yeah, that's going to be the deck tech. Make sure to check our Moxfield link down below where we have the full deck tech down there. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and if you guys are going to be going to MagicCon, make sure to see Quest there. I couldn't get it off, but definitely say what's up to us, you know, and all that stuff. We're super down. He's gonna be super down to talk to you guys about Magic and all that stuff. So have a good one, guys.